Hi friends, it's your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. We're going to talk about Brennan Lee Mulligan's Critical Role campaign for Araman, and I'm going to present new receipts today to double tap on something I've said previously, but I think there's new evidence of what I was saying is true, and I want to present that evidence to you. In my humble opinion, it's true. Okay, and so what is that? So I think there is a whole lot of fudging going on. There's fudging on both sides of the table in the Critical Role campaign for Araman. I believe the Dungeon Master is fudging dice, and I believe the players are fudging dice. And I will say it's not a big deal if the Dungeon Master is fudging dice. There's a long tradition of dice fudging in Dungeons & Dragons. There is, and so basically, there's, this has been going, it's been an evergreen subject of whether Dungeon Masters should fudge dice. And absolutely nobody debates that it's not allowed. What's debated is there's a lot of people who say, hey, if you are fudging dice as a Dungeon Master, you suck. It's allowed, you just suck, right? Like, because you're not allowing the story to unfold in a natural, organic way. You don't have the courage to find out. You're just writing a bad novel, right? Like, you just give up and go write your bad novel. And, don't include people and audiences in your bad novel writing, right? Like, it's definitely a thing, right? So, but it is allowed. Like but it's such a bad practice that it's openly debated on whether you should. It's not really debated on whether you can, right? Because we do have the authority to change rules in Dungeons & Dragons, and there's even precedence for it going back to the very beginning of the creation of the game. Okay, so all right, but there is absolutely no established, this is not debated on the player side. There's nothing in Dungeons & Dragons that says that players should be, rolled an 8 and said they rolled a 12. There's absolutely no precedence for that. But I think that is definitely happening in Campaign Araman, and we have new evidence. All right, so let me just say my old evidence really quickly. So what brought me to believe this was one of the newer players rolled a die rolled a difficulty check, rolled a die for a difficulty check, and said to Brennan Lee Mulligan, "I succeeded." And immediately, like, my ears went up, and I was like, "What? Did that player just tell the Dungeon Master that they succeeded?" That's super weird, right? And the reason why is players don't tell Dungeon Masters that they've succeeded on a roll. They report their result, and the Dungeon Master says with it. And so the moment that happened, I was like, what's happening here, right? And so then I was like, well, let's just check the tape, right? And then I realized there was no tape there. So they got cameras on the left nostril of every player. Like, they got cameras everywhere. We already know they could be shooting every die roll at that table. How do we know? Because of the big map camera, right? They've had extremely high resolution cameras on miniatures that are precariously perched on the top of a, some castle piece, right? Like, we know they can shoot this stuff, right? So not only do we know they could shoot the die rolls, we also know there would be a long line of commercial suppliers for this, right? Not only would a Critical Role be given immediately, free dice from 10 different companies, almost certainly, they would be paid by those companies. So there is massive commercial, and the moment I started thinking, I'm like, there is massive commercial incentive to record die rolls, right? Like, every die company in the world wishes that, like, they could get Critical Role to feature their dice in every roll by every player. They could be paid a separate check for every player at the table by a separate company and get 2 checks, a check for the dice tray and for the dice itself. They would never have to pay for a single one, and they would be paid to put this. There is massive commercial incentive for Critical Role to record every die roll and show it on every play, right? But they never do it. So the moment I saw that, I was like, oh man, those players are fudging, right? Because while there's massive commercial incentive to tape these die rolls, they're not doing it, right? All right. That's my old receipt. Here's my new receipt. Okay, campaign 4, Critical Role campaign, season 4, episode 4. Okay, Octus. Octus is killed. Air quotes. All right. Now, in order, and Octus is killed, and then he's brought back to life. Okay. However, get this. You're like, oh my gosh, that's exciting and fresh and new. No, it is not. It is not exciting, fresh, or new. It is outrageously lame because it was planned from the start. How do we know this? They told us it was planned from the start, right? Like, they literally said it after the game. They're like, so Octus is played by Alex Ward, and he is a human wizard with a necromancy specialty. And once he was killed and then resurrected, afterwards, they're like, well, Octus wanted to play a hollow one. He wanted to play an undead character. Well, first of all, you should have just started with an undead character, right? Why should he have started with an undead character? Because in order to get here, 3 people's roles were involved. 3 people's roles were involved. 3 people's roles were involved, right? Okay. All the roles for Brennan Lee Mulligan had to go the right way. The roles for Alex Ward had to go the right way, and the roles for Marisha Ray had to go the right way. There were 3 people's roles in the path of this happening. Now, what do you think is correct? No fudging is happening, and the thing that they planned happened perfectly because all the dice rolls went right, or those dice that have no cameras on them, right? All of those dice went just perfectly to do the thing that they planned to happen. If you think the answer is the first, that they all went, if you think that the answer is that all the dice rolls just naturally went well, I got a bridge I'd like to sell you, right? I got a bridge over some swampland I'd like to sell you, right? Like, it's like, come on. Like, so I just feel like campaign 4, Critical Role campaign Araman. Critical Role campaign, season 4, Araman, episode 4, is a presents very, very strong receipts. Brennan Lee Mulligan's roles, Alex Ward's roles, and Marisha Ray's roles. That the roles are not real. The results are not real. They are really rolling it. We hear it. We hear the evidence that those dice are being rolled, right? But they go in the dice tray and they just say whatever number they need, right? Because there's a story they want to tell, right? They are not playing to find out. They are not playing as Gary designed the game to have serendipity and excitement. It's just Brennan Lee Mulligan's bad novel, right? With some friends, writing what he wrote, like, playing through what he wrote, or actually adding to his script, right? Like, but a Dungeons and Dragons game is supposed to be the dungeon master does their part, the players do their part, and both of them are interrupted by fate, right? Like, Gary put the dice in for a reason, right? There's 5 platonic solids and 1 non-platonic solid, and they're supposed to matter. And increasingly, in Critical Role, in my opinion, you're hearing the dice roll. Chuckity chuck, 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 chuck. They are not honoring the numbers when they don't want to. I think some rolls are real, right? But anytime it goes against the story they want to tell, they're not reporting the real number. They're not. They're reporting the number they want, right? Increasingly, this is what I believe. This is my belief for Critical Role. I do not believe for 1 second that we're getting a situation where this isn't a situation where Gary's intended structure is being honored, right? There's the dungeon masters are showing up at the table. Are they letting the dice decide anything? We don't know. The players are showing up at the table. Are they letting the dice decide anything? We don't know, right? Like, and increasingly, I think the answer is no. I just feel there's extremely strong receipts that There's fudging on the Dungeon Master side, and there's fudging on the player side. I feel like you have to strain yourself to believe otherwise at this point. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when we get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.